Um, I wanted to talk today about emotional eating, right? Again, there's sort of like some basic things I get asked about all the time. Again, when people find out that my focus is really about helping people reprogram and rewire their relationship with food, what's going on up here. And one of the things people ask me about all the time is emotional eating, right? We eat when we're stressed, we eat when we're sad, we eat when we're lonely, we eat when we're feeling overwhelmed, we eat when we're bored. And it's frustrating, right? It's frustrating because it's one of those times when you want to make better choices, right? You want to stay on track. Maybe you have a program you're following, you have goals that you have, and yet feelings happen, life happens, and we end up getting derailed. We end up turning to the food when we feel not so great. So my name is Sarah Best. If this is the first time you're catching one of my live broadcasts, I am a registered holistic nutritionist, but my clients like to joke that I'm the nutritionist who never talks about food. And that's because it's my belief that we don't need any more information about food, right? We already know a lot about what we should be eating more of, what we should be eating less of. Obviously, there's a lot of details you can get into, but for the most part, we kind of know, right? Where we get stuck is in doing it consistently, right? Staying on track, staying consistent with the choices that we know we should be making. And things like emotional eating are one of the things that tend to trip us up, right? Whether it's, again, eating when you're bored, eating when you're stressed, overwhelmed, crazy day at work, fight with your partner, fight with your family, whatever, we end up turning to food. And so that's what I wanted to dive into today. So the first thing I just want to let you know is that your brain is actually programmed to do this. So I just want to set aside any feelings or beliefs you might have that this is, that your habits or patterns around emotional eating have to do with the fact that you have no willpower or you lack discipline or you're weak or any of those things, because that's not what's happening. Your brain is actually programmed to do this, okay? And every time we fight against it and we judge ourselves and we try and sort of, I call it white knuckling, like, you're stressed, you want the potato chips, and you just sit there and you think, don't eat the potato chips, don't eat the potato chips. When you try to do that, when you try to play tug of war with your brain, when you try to fight your brain's natural programming, you're usually going to lose, right? You're usually going to lose because your brain is programmed the way it was like back in caveman days. We're talking hundreds of thousands of years of programming here that you're trying to resist with sheer willpower. And we know how that ends, right? So I just want to explain a little bit of what do I mean when I say your brain is programmed to do this? Well, your brain is hardwired to avoid pain and seek pleasure, right? For your brain, pain indicates danger, right? And what your brain wants to do is keep you alive and keep you safe. Again, we're dealing with caveman software here, remember. So the thing is that in our modern day, pain has kind of morphed into we have a new definition for pain, or there's different things maybe that qualify as pain that might not have in our caveman days. So now pain might not be, touching fire, right? Avoid fire, or fighting saber-toothed tiger, run away from saber-toothed tiger, right? Avoid pain, seek pleasure. Now we're dealing with subtler things, emotional pain, right? Psychological pain, overwhelm from the outside world, social media, technology, just the modern world. And so, but for your brain, it's no different. Right? The same programming is still applying. So when you feel stressed, when you feel tired, when you feel lonely, when you feel bored, any of these uncomfortable, unpleasant feelings, your brain registers that as pain, right? Pain, danger, right? Must get away, avoid pain, seek pleasure. This is your brain's natural programming. So it's important that we're just aware that that's what's going on. Again, it's not a lack of willpower. It's not a lack of discipline. It's not that you just haven't figured out what you're supposed to be eating. This is how your brain is naturally wired. And I see people all the time trying to fight this, right? Locked in this tug of war game and losing. And it's so frustrating and it's so demoralizing. And I don't want you to be stuck there anymore. So the thing is that if you have a relationship with food like I have had, and like if you're watching this, you probably had, where food is your go-to for pleasure, then when your brain senses pain, in this case, emotional pain, it's going to try and get away from that pain and go to pleasure. And for my brain, probably for your brain, if you're watching this, that means food. Now, that's not the case for everybody. Different people have the same programming, but their neurocircuitry is a little different. And so food might not be where they get their pleasure. Maybe they're obsessing over social media. Maybe they're shopping. Maybe they're using drugs and alcohol. Maybe they're using relationships, right? Maybe they're using, could be all kinds of things. We all have different neural pathways around that we've built up around what our brains associate with pleasure. But again, for myself, and I'm assuming if you're watching this, if you're in my world at all, for us, it's been food. And that's why when we feel stress, when we feel icky feelings, we go to food, right? We don't even really think about it. It's just your brain's natural wiring. Again, other people might feel that way and go gambling. They might go shopping. They might be on Tinder and trying to hook up with somebody, right? They might be going to drugs and alcohol. They might be doing all kinds of things. But for us, it's food, unfortunately, and not healthy food, right? It's those highly processed carbohydrates, sugar, quick fix into your bloodstream in terms of that pleasure. So I just want you to know that that's what's going on when we talk about emotional eating, when we feel like we're stuck in these old ruts. Now, what can we do, right? What do we do? That's great to know, right? But what do we do when we are stressed, when we're in the middle of a crazy day, when we're hurt, when we're angry, when we're sad, when we're lonely, when we're bored? What do we do when we feel that tug of food? Well, what I want you to think about doing is feeling the feeling instead of trying to eat the feeling, right? Feelings are just energy. That's all they are. I know that we have an initial reaction of avoid the feeling, almost like pulling your hand away from a hot stove, right? It's a reflex. And that's what's happening with feelings. When we feel something icky, we have a reflex. And again, this is your brain's wiring to avoid pain. We want to get away from it. And so we want to, again, our brains want to go to food. The way we override that, the way we reprogram our brains around that is to be willing to feel the feeling, allow it, right? Just get curious about it, right? What is this feeling? Give it a name. What are you actually feeling? And just let it in. It's okay to sit with an uncomfortable feeling. I know it's not pleasant, and I'm not encouraging you to wallow in the feeling. This isn't about self-pity or having a pity party or woe is me. It's not that. But it is about being okay with having an uncomfortable feeling, knowing that it's temporary, knowing that it's just energy, knowing that it can't actually hurt you, even though there is that deep programming, like the hand from the hot stove that is telling you, don't want this, pull away, pain, don't like this. We can use our more modern prefrontal cortex of our brain, right? The more modern, rational part of your brain to override that old caveman brain and its messages. It takes some mindfulness. It takes being aware. It takes being willing to sit with an uncomfortable feeling. But that's really the first step. We have to just be willing to experience the feeling. Again, knowing that it's just energy, knowing that it's temporary, and knowing that it can't actually hurt us. Okay. You can use that time to sort of get curious about it. Like I said, give it a name. What is this feeling? Where is it coming from? Are the things, the thoughts that are in my head that are creating this feeling, are they true? You can get curious and just start to explore the feeling. What's really going on here? Why am I feeling this way? And then what you want to do next is, again, knowing that your brain is hardwired to avoid pain and seek pleasure, right? It's going to want to get away from that uncomfortable feeling, even if you're willing to feel it. And it's going to want to replace that with something more positive. So what we need to do is we need to think about what could we offer our brains instead of food that might also feel pleasurable. And this is going to be different for different people, but try different things. It could be, pampering yourself a little bit. Maybe it's like a bubble bath. Maybe you want to do your nails. Maybe you want to, do a face mask, right? Like maybe you want to take care of yourself a little bit. Maybe you need a little self-love and a little self-care. Maybe you need to connect with somebody. Maybe you need to text a friend or phone a friend or go for a walk with someone or just, chat with your partner or talk to your kids about their day or, call someone in your family. You know, maybe there's a connection piece that would feel good. Maybe it's like a brain dump, right? Sometimes I like to just get out a piece of paper and just write down, just get it out. If it's stress, if it's overwhelm, like just get it out of your head. Just write down. No one needs to see it. It doesn't need to make any sense. Just get it out of your head. Write down all the thoughts that are yammering at you, all the things, all the to-dos, all the worries, all the what ifs. Just write it all down, and then you can throw it away if you want, but just get it out of your head. Sometimes journaling, right? Just journaling about what it is you're feeling. Sometimes that's a great way to kind of process through the feeling. It can feel very relaxing. It can feel like you're wrapping your hands around the problem and sort of figuring it out a little bit. So for some people, journaling is a great way to work through a feeling and start to bring in a more pleasant feeling than the feeling of helplessness, overwhelm. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's going to, fear, basically. So there can be lots of other things as well, but think about for you, what are the things that is it going for a walk? Is it, doing something creative? Do you like to play the guitar or paint, or, are you working on a novel, or, is it cooking? Like, what are the things that you love to do that just make you feel like, just kind of lower those shoulders a little bit and you just feel more grounded, safe, good, right? Think about that, and think about how when you're feeling the feeling, knowing that your brain is just hardwired to want to avoid that feeling and get to something more pleasant. What can we replace the food with that is something pleasant that would actually be more effective, positive, healthy? And as you're doing this, as you're starting to notice the things that you can replace the food with to deal with these feelings and work with your brain's natural wiring in this way, make note of this, because once you start to identify some of these things you can do when difficult feelings come up, when life comes at you, this is going to start to formulate your plan, right? I talk a lot about the importance of having a plan, not only for what you're going to eat, but for what you're going to do when you're in these sort of triggering situations. So I want you to start to think about what your plan is for emotional eating. If you're an emotional eater, I want you to start thinking about what's your plan going to be, because this isn't going to be the last time these feelings are going to come up, right? You're going to have other stressful days. You're going to be heartbroken again. You're going to be disappointed again. You're going to feel lonely again. This is life. So we can't just hope for the best, right? When those things happen, we need a plan about what are we specifically going to do, knowing that those feelings are often a trigger for us, right? Because we can allow the feeling, we can work with that. But at the end of the day, we're always probably going to be hardwired a little bit to be emotional eaters if that's been your pattern. So having a plan is going to be so helpful for you going into the future, to think about what are the things you can do. So I want you to think about that, okay? So emotional eating, think about allowing the feeling. Just practice. Just think about, I often suggest people try this, just baby steps. So, if your go-to is like after you're feeling stress and you grab a chocolate bar, that's your thing. I encourage you to, next time the stress comes up, just feel it for 5 minutes, right? Literally, like you can set the timer on your phone. I'm going to feel this stress. I'm just going to sit in this stress for 5 minutes. Then I'm going to go get the chocolate bar, right? It doesn't have to be all or nothing here. Sometimes the idea that if you try to tell your brain, no, we're just going to feel the stress, we're not going to have the candy bar, that can be even more stressful and ultimately end up in this not working. So baby step your way into this, right? Like, I'm going to feel the stress. I'm going to feel this loneliness. I'm going to feel this hurt for 5 minutes, for 7 minutes, for 10 minutes, whatever you think you can do. Put it on your phone. And when that alarm goes off, if you still want the chocolate bar, go have it. It's okay. You're doing some work already to do that reprogramming and rewiring. But more and more, you might feel that you can extend that time. You might feel like, oh, this isn't so bad, actually. Apparently, this feeling isn't going to kill me. That time, that gap might give you time to go find one of these healthier options for something you could do when you're feeling that way. So think about how you can baby step your way into that and increase that gap between the feeling and reaching for the food. Okay? I hope this was helpful. Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to know, what are the feelings that trigger you to reach for food, right? Is it stress? Is it boredom? Is it loneliness? Is it overwhelm? Is it hurt? Is it sadness? Is it fear? Is it worry? Like, what are the feelings? What's the feeling that most triggers you to grab the food? And it'll be interesting to see everybody's responses. And I'm sure you'll see yourself in a lot of other people's responses. So I hope this was helpful. Give it a try. Let me know how it goes. I know that emotional eating is a really frustrating one for many folks. So let me know how this one goes for you. Okay?